It's all the same pattern everywhere. Let it come down and it will all stop. And then we can get back to building society on a foundation that is simple, that is hard, and that is long lasting. Hey guys, Ralph here from the Endgame Investor. Let's talk about the Ponzi scheme of Bitcoin. Fortunately, Bitcoin has gone to the moon, where everything weighs about 20% of what it weighs on Earth. Or is it coming back from the moon? Or is it on the moon? I don't know. I don't understand anything about Bitcoin. So we hear these sayings being thrown around all the time that Bitcoin is a Ponzi scheme, Bitcoin is this and that. How is it a Ponzi scheme? There could be some Ponzi aspects to it, but it's really just an inflation scheme. How does an inflation scheme work in every instance of inflation? There is a base money, there is an actual money that is a commodity that is the money itself, and then there is a substitute for the money, whether it be paper or digital or whatever. Whoever issues the substitute for the money lies about how much money actually exists, inflates the money substitute supply, uses those money substitutes to buy some kind of asset, inflates the prices of those assets, the public figures it out, sells the money substitute loses value, so does everything denominated in that money substitute, and everything falls. That's what happens again and again and again in every inflationary scheme. How is Bitcoin an inflationary scheme? Because there are these things called stable coins, whether it's USDT, Tether, Schmether, Luna, Duna, Flargon. I don't know what they're called, but they're supposedly backed by US dollars, which in this case, in that inflationary scheme, we would call US dollars the money, even though US dollar is a derivative of gold because it is a gold substitute, which is why it has any value in the first place. So in the Bitcoin scheme, what is happening is this, and I made this little bullet pointed thingy on PowerPoint. You can see here I went to the design school of Sparta for austerity. Bitcoin endgame is a preview for the dollar endgame. Okay, so you have three steps. I'm describing two inflationary processes here, one within the other. It's all pyramidal. Each inflationary scheme works within the context of the other one. Okay, so with Bitcoin, we have Tether is inflated over the dollar supply. Tether is, I think, the most popular USD stablecoin, which is supposedly backed by US dollars. So the issue of Tether invents more Tether code over and above the dollar supposedly backing it. So Tether is the inflationary asset here. Tether used to buy Bitcoin and other cryptos. And then you take those Tethers, you buy Bitcoin with them on the exchange of USDT to Bitcoin. So that inflates the price of Bitcoin and other cryptos over the dollar supply of Tether. The public figures this out eventually, sells the Tether, the peg between Tether and the dollar breaks down, and everything priced in Tether, which includes Bitcoin because it was bought with Tether, which was only fakely backed by US dollars, everything falls together, all cryptos. Now, this hasn't happened with Tether yet, but it has happened with another stablecoin. But before we get to that, that is within the same inflationary process, the same process as the dollar versus gold. So what does the Fed do? What do all central banks do? They inflate their dollars or euros or yen over the gold supply backing these money substitutes we call currencies. The dollar is first inflated over the gold supply. Dollars are then used to buy stocks, bonds, real estate, all kinds of assets. The prices of all assets go up. The public eventually figures this out, sells the dollar for the gold, which is the real money in this case. And then as gold rises, everything falls in gold terms, dollar terms, whatever. I don't know what's going to happen. Some things are going to go up nominally, down nominally, but it doesn't matter because in terms of ounces of gold, everything is going to fall hard. That is why hyperinflation is the same as the pricking of the bubble. Hyperinflation is deflation. Hyperinflation is hyperdeflation for those who own real money. It is only hyperinflationary for those who own the hyperinflated money substitutes. But in the end, hyperdeflation and hyperinflation are the same thing. Whether it happens in dollar terms or gold terms is irrelevant. As long as you have gold, you will be protected against hyperdeflation and hyperinflation. Stable coins are already starting to fall, starting with the weakest ones, the ones stacked with the most bullshit in their descriptions of what the hell they are. So I'm going to read this description, and you're probably not going to understand about 75% of the nonsense garbled words in it. 21st century woke finance, maybe could call it. But that doesn't mean you're stupid. It just means that bullshit doesn't register in your brain, which is, a good thing. First here, okay, we have this stable coin called Terra USD. I don't really understand how it works. I'm not going to try to explain it because, quite frankly, I don't care. But this is the Terra USD stablecoin, supposedly backed by US dollars in some kind of way or whatever. And then bam, it collapses to 20 cents in the dollar. It's now trading at 17.87 cents in the dollar and is not recovering. So here is the lovely description of what is Terra USD, UST, something, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so prepare to be baffled with a bunch of crap. Here it is. Terra USD is the decentralized and algorithmic stablecoin of the Terra blockchain.
What exactly is it your company does again?
Oh, this industry moves so fast, it's really hard to tell.
It is a scalable, yield-bearing coin that is value pegged to the US dollar. Terra USD was created to deliver value to the Terra community and offer a scalable solution of DeFi.
Parking Officer Steve
Grabowski.
Amid severe scalability problems faced by their stablecoin leaders like DAI. Thus, Terra USD promises users a higher level of scalability, interest rate accuracy, and interchain usage. Interchain, interplex, interslice.
Cutco, EdgeCom, Interslice.
Yeah. Terra USD provides several benefits that have made it a standout stablecoin competitor. They really got to change this. Due to its minting mechanism, USD meets the requirements of DeFi protocols that it uses without losing scale. What the hell is another area where Terra USD has shown its power is dApps. There's too many capital letters everywhere. For example, platforms that mint fungible synthetic assets.
We call them synthetic CDOs.
What did you synthetic CDOs?
Synthetic CDOs.
That is crazy.
It's not. It's awesome.
And I know what you're thinking. What the f is a synthetic CDO?
And track real-life asset prices are use USD as a pricing benchmark. Fungible synthetic asset would be a good name for a band. This is the punchline here. Terra USD was launched in September 2020 in collaboration with Bitrex Global.
How about CompuGlobal HyperMegaNet?
And has since gained the reputation as the most scalable stablecoin. UST can be used in conjunction with Luna, Terra's non-stable coin crypto, or as a standalone token. So what I think is going on here is that Terra was backed with Luna, which is just another crypto instead of US dollars, and Luna is, they were like buying or selling. There was like another inflationary scheme of Luna versus Terra, and then Terra within USD, and then USD within Bitcoin. Like it's like a quadruple derivative stablecoin scam. And now here we have the description of a bubble imploding, a deflationary implosion, which is going to happen to the dollar versus gold as well, because it's the same mechanism. On May 9th, 2022, UST depegged and plunged from $1 to a low of 68 cents. I'll make that, 20 cents now or 17 cents. At the time of writing, it is unclear whether UST will recover its peg. After UST started trading slightly below its dollar peg, the curve pool containing UST got progressively emptied. This is a run, right? There's going to be a run on gold in the dollar collapse instead of a run on dollars in a Luna UST collapse. All right. People were cashing out their UST for other stable coins. At the same time, short selling of Luna drove the price of Luna, the collateral for UST, down. Well, short selling is nothing special. It's just for every short seller, there's a buyer. So it doesn't really change anything. You can call it short selling. It's just selling. This downwards price pressure forced Terra to mint even more Luna in an attempt to stop the downward spiral of USD, right? To mint even more Luna, meaning they had to inflate more in order to stop the downward spiral of UST, which means in the hyper deflationary threat, every time there's a deflationary threat, the Fed has to inflate the dollar more. But this is the end game, whereas the more they inflate the dollar, the more there is a run on it, and it falls to zero in the end of the extreme money printing, which is exactly what happened to Luna. It's going to happen to the dollar as well. This diluted the price of Luna, but did nothing to restore the peg. Even a $1.5 billion sale of BTC out of Terra's treasury did not succeed in restoring faith in USD. So this is the equivalent, right? So they're selling Bitcoin out of the Terra's treasury, which supposedly backs the stable coin that is also backed by Luna. There's like an inflationary loop here where everything is, kind of relied on itself, and there's like a domino that goes in a circle. So the equivalent of that in the dollar endgame, like when USD is trying to sell $1.5 billion of BTC to support the UST, is going to be when the Treasury does its best to like sell a whole bunch of gold in order to support the dollar, but it's just going to drive the dollar even further down because it has less gold backing it when they sell it. In theory, it works very, very temporarily, and then it's just the bottom falls out of everything. It's the same thing that happened in Weimar. There was a period, I think in 1922, early 1923, when the German central bank at that time sold a lot of its gold, and the German Reichsmark, I think, gained 20 or 30% in a month or so, but then it just collapsed to nothing later. Here's the final sentence here. Akin to a bank run, UST holders would rather take pennies on their UST than redeem it for Luna. Right? So the equivalent of that in the gold endgame, the dollar gold endgame, would be akin to a bank run. USD, US dollar holders, would rather take minuscule amounts of gold for their US dollars rather than hold them. You will have the same thing in the bond market. The bonds have been inflated beyond their ability to be paid back. So akin to a bank run in the bond market, you would say US bond, US Treasury holders, even has the same letters, USD, US Treasury holders would rather take pennies on their paper rather than hold them to maturity for dollars that won't be worth anything. It's all the same inflationary crap. Now, ultimately, UST or Terra coin, whatever it is a minor stablecoin that hasn't been primarily used to inflate the price of Bitcoin. It is a small player in the field. The big one is USDT or Tether. That was, I think, was the first stablecoin, and that was under threat on May 9th to 11th as well. It has recovered, but it's going to get smashed again, and it is just a matter of time. Do I think Bitcoin is entirely worthless? No, I don't think it is entirely worthless. There's probably some use cases for it that are being extremely overblown at this point. Is it going to survive at all? I can't say for sure, but I'm leaning towards, yeah, it'll probably survive in some form, but it'll be some kind of collector's item for people to remember this crazy era where people thought that a code of something was worth exchanging real goods and services for it because it's money. Essentially, what's happening here with these pyramidal inflationary schemes is that every time there's another layer in the pyramid, it gets more complicated. They sound smarter, and the mechanisms to hold everything up seem impossibly complex. But those who think they understand it or who say they understand it have no idea what they're talking about, but they sound like geniuses. So imagine like, a contest of houses of cards being built, and each one more elaborate and beautiful than the next. And the one, as they get more elaborate and beautiful, the audience goes, wow, what an amazing house of cards. This must have taken years to build in such precision and built with robots that can precisely make their movements to within the width of a DNA strand. And you have to have a complete vacuum because a single air molecule will collapse the entire thing. But yeah, it is beautiful in a sense of its complexity, I guess, if you're into just weird fractals of finance. And then you have some guy who just has like a block of gold and he sets it down and nothing can move it. So what do you need in finance? You need these ever more intricate and impressive houses of cards that if you touch them, they collapse? Or do you want a bedrock of finance that is worth something that you can actually build your life off of? So don't feel like you're an idiot if you have no idea what these techno babble people of the woke generation are talking about. See, there's inflationary finance that keeps getting more complicated, but it bleeds itself out into every aspect of society. And now we have how many genders? 100, 200, 300 genders of all these alphabet soups of nothing that anyone can understand. The inflation has bled into gender. And there's inflation in sexual orientations. There's straights, there's gays, there's bis, there's metros, there's people who are attracted to furniture, to celestial bodies, cars. I don't, people who have no sexual attraction to anything but their own imaginations. There are narcosexuals. It's all the same pattern everywhere. Let it come down and it will all stop. And then we can get back to building society on a foundation that is simple, that is hard, and that is long lasting. This is Rafi, the Endgame Investor. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to a 2-week free trial of the Endgame Investor. Link in the description below. Or become my patron on Patreon for as little as $3 a month to get a weekly video on monetary and economic topics off of the Bible as a rock solid base of foundational morality in the monetary and economic world.